So in this video, we're going to learn how to display a map using a third-party library called Leaflet. So to start, let's quickly Google Leaflet, and probably the first result will already be for this library. So you see that Leaflet is an open source JavaScript library for mobile-friendly interactive maps. So essentially, this is a library that some other developers wrote and that we can now include for free in our own code and use it. And in this case, we can use it to display maps. And whenever we use a third-party library, the first thing to do is to basically include it in our site. And so let's come here to the downloads page. And so here we can download Leaflet to our computer if we want it. Or we can also use a hosted version of Leaflet. And this basically means that we can use a version of this library that is already hosted by someone else. So in this case, it is on a CDN, which is a content delivery network. And so it has this URL here. So that stands for unpackage.com. And then here we have the Leaflet library. So actually, we will need a CSS file. And we will also need a JavaScript file. Now, there are also a bit more elegant ways of including JavaScript. For example, using a package manager like npm. And then all we would have to do is npm install Leaflet into our application. And actually, this is how we will do it in the future. So in one of the next sections, we will actually learn how to do this using the npm package manager. But for now, probably the easiest way to get started is to simply include a hosted version that is on a CDN. And so let's grab this code here and paste it in our HTML's head. So right here, and before our own script, and that's very important. All right. So this here is our script. And of course, it is in our script where we will then use the Leaflet library. And so by the time that our script loads, the browser must already have downloaded the Leaflet library, because otherwise our code will not be able to work with that library. That makes sense, right? Now, here we also want to specify actually the defer attribute. So as we learned previously, we should never put any JavaScript in the header without any of the defer or async attributes. And since the order matters here, remember, we must then use the defer attribute. And so this is actually a perfect example for when we need to use defer. Because again, here the order in which the scripts are downloaded is actually very important. Okay, so give it a save here, and then let's go back to the Leaflet site. So we already included the library into our site, but of course we need to do something with it. So on its own, this Leaflet script here doesn't do anything. So we now need to use basically the functions that are defined in this library to our advantage. And so to actually use the library on our own page. And so down here, there is a very simple example of how we could implement a map with a certain coordinates here, so these coordinates, and then also how to display a very simple marker like this one. So again, let's just go to this overview page here. So basically the very first page, and then just copy this very simple code that we have here. So copy it, and then this is what I actually want to happen when the browser is successful getting the coordinates. So let's paste this here, give it a save, and now of course we need to adapt this here to our current situation. First, let's make this a const and not a var. Then whatever string that we pass here into this map function must be the ID name of an element in our HTML, and it is in that element where the map will be displayed. And so what that means is that in our HTML, we need an element with the ID of map. And that should already be here So that is down here. So here I have this empty div, and it has the ID of map. And so that's exactly this here. So I could change it here, and then of course I would also have to change it in the HTML. Now this L here, this is basically the main function that Leaflet gives us as an entry point. So basically this is kind of the namespace, a little bit like, for example, this Intel namespace for the internationalization API. So we talked about namespaces before, and so Leaflet basically gives us this L namespace here. And then that L has a couple of methods that we can use. And one of them is this map method. Another one is this tile layer, where we actually need to define the tiles of our map. And then we can also display markers like this. So this should probably already render a map on our page. It will do that on these coordinates, but for now, that's okay for us. So let's just see if this actually worked. Well, let's try to reload here. But for some reason, nothing is happening. So let's check if here in the console we actually have access to that L variable. And you see that we do. So this L here is of course the L that we used previously in our code as well. So it's this L here, and it is available here in this script and also here in the browser console because it is essentially a global variable inside of the script of Leaflet, right? So here in this script that we included here, leaflet.js, the L variable is a global variable that we then can access from all the other scripts. And I think that this is something that we never saw happening before because we never worked with multiple scripts. So let me show it a little bit better to you and include another script here. Let's call it just other.js. So I'm creating it here, other.js. And now let's define first name here, set it to Jonas, and then here in the script.js, I should be able to access that variable. So let's see. And here it is. And so the reason for that is that this first name variable is a global variable here in this script. And so again, any variable that is global in any script will be available to all the other scripts. Well, as long as they appear after that script here included in the HTML. So script.js has access to all the global variables in other.js, or in other.js and leaflet.js. But for example, other.js does not have access to anything from script.js because it appears afterwards. All right. So in other, let's see any variable here. So for example, the month. So here we will not have access to month. All right. So month is not defined. And so the reason for that, again, is that by the time that this script here is executed, this other.js, script.js has not yet been loaded. And so therefore, it doesn't find this month variable anywhere in the global scope. All right. But this was just an example. Let's get rid of this. Well, not get rid, let's just comment it out here maybe. And anyway, maybe you noticed that already the map here has appeared this time. And so what that means is that our code is working. Now this one here is simply appearing in London, and that's because we still have the default code. But now you can probably see that what we want to do here is to use our own latitude and longitude here, right? So let's create an array called chords like this, and it will contain first the latitude, so that's the standard first latitude, and then the longitude. And now let's use that array here, because as you see, this setView method expects this array of coordinates. Then it also expects this second parameter, but let's talk about that one later. So here it's chords. And then let's also use the same coordinates here for the marker. All right, let's check again. And all right, that works. Now here we just have this error from the first variable that we created in the other script. But what matters here is that now we have this beautiful map here right at my, well, approximate location right now. Now that other number that we saw in the function is basically the zoom level of the map. So we can zoom in and zoom out here on this. And so, yeah, let's try with some other values here. For example, 10. Then you see that it's a lot more zoomed out. But let's say we use 17, then that's probably going to be pretty close. Yeah, that's probably as close as it gets. And actually 13 is a pretty reasonable number. So let's keep it at 13. And now let's talk about this tile layer here. So the map that we see on the page is basically made up of small tiles. And these tiles, they come from this URL here, which basically is from OpenStreetMap. And maybe you have heard of OpenStreetMap, and it's basically an open source map that everyone can use for free. And so OpenStreetMap is actually the one that we're going to use, but Leaflet works with all other kinds of maps as well, for example with Google Maps, if that's the one that you prefer. Now we can also use this URL here to change the appearance of our map. So what we see here right now, or hopefully soon, is basically the default map of OpenStreetMaps. Now, however, when you Google around a little bit, you can find different styles. And so what I want to do now is to change this style to another one that I found. And so to do that, you can simply change this one here to FR. And then here it is /hot and another slash, and that's actually it. So that's simply another theme of these tiles. And so if you give it a save, then now you see that it looks different. And in my opinion, that actually looks a lot better. So when you refresh, maybe you see that it builds up basically in these tiles. So did you see that? So basically these map squares, they appear one by one. And so that's what I mean by tiles. So those are the tiles that the map is made out of. Let's just get rid of this error here. And then I think that for now, this is actually enough. So we also have this marker down here. And so that's for this marker plus this pop-up. But let's talk about in the next lecture how we can actually create our own ones and then also display a pop-up and a marker wherever we click on the map. So if I clicked here, then I wanted a pop-up here and a marker. Or if I clicked over here, then I wanted the marker to be here. And so that's going to require a little bit more work. And so let's leave that for the next video.